Welcome back to Baha'i on Air. I'm Mark.
And I'm Jane. Hello, everyone. It's good to be back.
Today we're doing another deep dive, this time into a really significant letter from the Universal House of Justice. It's dated March 1st, 2017.
That's right. And this letter really focuses in on the social and economic conditions of the world and, humanity's response to them.
So our aim today is to sort of unpack the key ideas in this letter. We want to explore what it means for Baha'i life, how it might apply to us individually, and maybe shape society more broadly.
Exactly. And connect it back to those core Baha'i principles we always talk about. It's a rich document.
Okay, let's jump right in then. Paragraph 1.
Mm.
It starts by talking about our world becoming more interconnected, right?
Yeah.
And how this makes social conditions everywhere much more visible.
Mm-hmm. You see the good things, the hopeful developments, but also the really tough challenges. Things like inequity, discrimination, exploitation.
Yeah, and the letter notes these problems seem, well, really resistant to the usual political solutions.
Right, which leads to prolonged suffering and highlights these deep-seated flaws in our economic structures.
And it connects this to Baha'u'llah's writings,
Right.
specifically the Law Dunya.
Yes, it quotes that tablet where Baha'u'lláh talks about the world's turmoil and the need for, divine illumination and justice.
So it's setting a context. These issues aren't new.
Not at all. And it immediately links this to the Baha'i community's role, saying we have a part to play in, bettering the world, and that these adverse conditions will increasingly demand our attention.
It really sets the stage for why this economic and social focus is so important for Baha'is right now.
Absolutely. Then paragraph 2 builds on that. It brings up the interconnectedness of human welfare.
The idea that no single group can truly thrive if others are suffering.
Exactly, that classic Baha'i principle of oneness. And it points out the negative results when we just focus on narrow self-interest or ignore, say, the environmental impact of our actions.
It calls out avarice and self-interest directly, doesn't it, as major obstacles to real social progress.
It does. And it doesn't shy away from the wealth issue either. It talks about unconscionable quantities of wealth being piled up while, income and opportunity are so unevenly spread globally and even within nations.
But there's a note of hope there, too, isn't there? It says these conditions, though they have deep roots in history,
They're not inevitable. Right. It suggests that our current economic ways of thinking, maybe they belong to an earlier stage of humanity's development.
like humanity's adolescence, perhaps.
Something like that. And that these approaches are just inadequate now for humanity's age of maturity, which means we need to rethink structures that don't serve everyone.
And really hammers home that point about the moral dimension of wealth.
Yeah.
Creating it, distributing it, using it, it's all deeply ethical.
Absolutely fundamental to the faith. Which leads nicely into paragraph 3, which discusses the stresses of this transition period we're in, moving towards a united world.
You see it in international relations, definitely, but also within societies. Fractures, divisions.
And the letter says our prevailing ways of thinking just aren't cutting it. We desperately need a shared ethic, a common framework to tackle these global crises.
And here's where it challenges a really common assumption, that relentless competition driven by self-interest is what leads to prosperity.
Right. That's a big one. The letter basically says defining people mainly by what they own or consume is wholly alien to Baha'i thought.
But it's careful not to just condemn wealth outright.
No, exactly. Asceticism, extreme self-denial, is actually prohibited. The key is how wealth is used. Does it serve humanity? Is its use guided by spiritual principles? That's the question.
And then that powerful quote from Baha'u'lláh about justice being essential for world order and peace. It all ties together.
It really does. Paragraph 4 then acknowledges something important. Baha'u'llah's revelation doesn't give us, a detailed economic textbook.
No specific system leading out.
Right. But the reorganization of society is a constant theme. And when you think about reorganizing society, well, economic questions inevitably come up.
The letter admits the future order Baha'u'lláh envisions is probably beyond what we can fully imagine right now.
But, and this is crucial, it says realizing that future depends on us. On Baha'is making strenuous efforts today to apply his teachings.
So our actions now are what build that future, even without a complete blueprint.
Precisely. And the letter states its purpose clearly, to get us Thinking, reflecting on how we participate in material life in a way that aligns with divine precepts.
Thinking about how we can advance collective prosperity through things like justice, generosity, collaboration.
Mutual assistance, yeah, it's a collective exploration.
Paragraph 5 then zooms in, saying this call to examine the economic side of things is really directed at individuals first, but also institutions and communities.
Yeah, it poses a challenge, doesn't it, if we're trying to build this new model of community life based on the teachings.
Then shouldn't our own lives reflect that, especially in our economic activities? Rectitude of conduct, it calls it.
It's such a strong point. Every economic choice, employer, employee, producer, consumer, it has a moral dimension. It leaves a trace.
We need coherence, between the lofty ideals and our day-to-day actions.
And as the community engages more with society, this economic aspect just needs more attention.
Especially in clusters where community building is really taking off. The writing should inform economic relationships more and more, at all levels.
And the encouragement is clear. Don't just accept the status quo, the prevailing values. We need to actively think about how the teachings apply to our lives.
And by doing that, individually and collectively, contributing to economic justice and social progress, we actually build up a body of knowledge, practical understanding.
Exactly. Learning by doing, essentially.
Okay, paragraph 6. This introduces a real cornerstone concept, the spiritual reality of humankind.
Absolutely foundational. The letter stresses the inherent nobility of every single human being. That's where the hope comes from.
Our souls can reflect divine attributes?
Right. And so economic life isn't just about money or things. It's an arena, a place where we can express spiritual qualities, honesty, integrity, generosity.
It pushes back hard against viewing people as just self-interested economic units.
Completely. And then we get those powerful quotes. Bahá'u'lláh saying, merit lies in service and virtue, not wealth and riches.
And Abdu'l-Bahá, in The Secret of Divine Civilization, talking about the honor and the incomparable bliss of being a source of social good, bringing peace and well-being.
It totally reframes success, doesn't it? Away from just personal gain towards service and uplifting society. That's where true meaning is found.
Paragraph 7 then asks us to look at our everyday economic activities through this lens. How can they enhance welfare?
It quotes Abdu'l-Bahá on how everyone needs an occupation, not just for themselves, but to help carry others' burdens.
It dignifies work, gives it a higher purpose.
Yeah, and it balances the duty of the poor to strive and the responsibility of the wealthy to have utmost regard for the poor.
It does affirm that wealth acquired honestly and used philanthropically is praiseworthy.
Highly praiseworthy, yes. But then comes the warning, right? From the hidden words. About wealth being a potential barrier, a test.
That need for detachment again. But then Baha'u'lláh praises the wealthy person who isn't hindered by riches, whose generosity shines.
It's a nuanced picture, and Abdu'l-Bahá calls the universal enrichment of the masses the supreme achievement. Not just a few getting rich, but everyone becoming wealthy in a broad sense.
Wealth for all, that's the goal.
Right. And then it mentions sukulah, the right of God, offering a portion of one's wealth.
As a way to balance priorities, purify wealth, contribute to the common good. The spiritual discipline.
Exactly. And it lists those key qualities again. Contentment, moderation, benevolence, fellow feeling, sacrifice, reliance on God. These should guide our economic lives.
Okay, paragraph 8. This draws a sharp contrast with, well, materialism.
Yeah, the mindset that happiness comes from just constantly acquiring more things, prioritizing possessions, often ignoring the environmental costs.
It talks about the seductive messages that fuel this sense of personal entitlement, sometimes disguised as, justice or rights.
And how this can lead to indifference about others' hardship or just being lost in consuming entertainment. It calls materialism's influence pervasive and enervating, weakening.
And it's called for Baha'is to be really conscious of this, to actively resist it, not just absorb it without thinking.
Crucial for parents, too, since kids absorb these norms so early. It mentions the junior youth program as helping foster discernment against this.
And the responsibility of young adults, even while busy with studies or careers, to stay aware of injustice.
Right, and how training institute courses help build those qualities that let us see past materialistic illusions and focus on service.
Ultimately, it says, systematic study of the Word of God is what really raises our consciousness about managing material affairs properly.
That's the core. It all comes back to the writings.
Finally, paragraph 9 wraps things up. It states that the extremes of wealth and poverty are becoming, well, untenable, unsustainable.
As this inequity continues, the established order seems shaky, its values questioned.
There's a prayer, then, for divine help, for Baha'is to overcome obstacles and serve humanity in these turbulent times.
And it highlights a specific responsibility for larger Baha'i communities to really engage with the root causes of poverty right where they are.
And the 5-year plan's community-building process. That's presented as the ideal space to learn more about the higher purpose of economic life.
Exactly. The hope is that this whole exploration, thinking about economics through a Baha'i lens, becomes a much bigger part of community life, institutional thinking, and individual action.
Part of building that divine civilization. It's a long game, but starts now.
It really does. This letter, I mean, it offers such profound insights. That link between spiritual life and economic life is just so clear.
It challenges us, doesn't it, to rethink wealth, work, prosperity, the whole thing. So for you listening in, we really hope this encourages some reflection, thinking about your own economic choices, your impact. How can you in your own life contribute to economic justice, guided by these teachings?
And please do read the full letter. It's available online on the Baha'i Reference Library, and explore other messages from the House of Justice and the writings on social and economic development. There's so much there.
Thank you all so much for joining us for this deep dive on Baha'i On Air. We hope it's given you something to think about.